Okay, guys, so welcome back to Inherent Success Podcast, where this is your guidance to self-discoveries, where we talk about business, success, different stories, and also health and wellness. And today I have my friend, Dr. Micheal, on the show today. So how are you feeling?
I'm feeling great. Thanks for having me, Emma.
Welcome to the show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's going to be a great episode.
Yes, I'm excited. How was your week?
It was good. It's been a fun week. We've had a lot of cool patients come into our clinic, so I enjoy that. We're getting ready for a hurricane, so I don't enjoy that part. But
that's right. Yeah. We're in the calm before the storm, guys.
Yes,
literally
right before.
Pre-storm podcast.
Yes, but you know what? That's just part of living in Florida. So yeah. I'll take that over snowstorms any day. So.
Oh my God, me too.
Yeah. Any day.
Yeah. Well, Micheal, I'm really excited to have you here for this episode. And guys, I actually met Micheal through my boyfriend. He is a doctor in physical therapy. So we're going to share a little bit. He's going to share a little bit of his story. Now, just so you know, with Inherent Success and what I do with all my guests, we kind of like take it all the way back. So it's more about transformational stories. So if you can just share with us, we'll kick it off. Just to share a little bit about like your background, where are you from? Let's take it back to little Micheal.
Sure. Back when I was the same height but younger, so that's perfect. So 20 years ago. So I'm originally from Cincinnati, Ohio, and I went to undergrad. I went to Miami University in Ohio, and then got my doctorate at University of Cincinnati, and then I did an 18-month optional sports medicine residency at the Cleveland Clinic, and that's when you graduate with your DPT, you are kind of like a generalist, similar to when you graduate as an MD. I always knew that I wanted to do sports medicine. So I was like, you know what? This is the best way to go. So I got a chance to work with some amazing people, learned so much. I worked with the Cleveland Cavaliers. I worked with the Cleveland Indians. I got a lot of work with international professional athletes too. I published a research article during residency too, and just had a lot of really great experiences. Went to University of Colorado out in Denver, got a chance to be one of the consultants for a professional rugby team when they had their pro rugby team out in Denver as well. And then moved to West Palm Beach, met my lovely wife, used to be a professor as well. And then when we moved from Delray Beach over to Sarasota, Lakewood Ranch, that's when I started Tideline.
Nice. Okay, so we're gonna take a little back. I love the story.
Okay.
We're gonna break it down a little
Sure.
bit. Yeah. So growing up, as a kid, right now, you're in sports medicine. Mm-hmm. Was that something like how was it growing up? Was that like medicine something that you've always wanted to do? Is that part of like your family? Like what inspired you?
Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah. So I am very fortunate. Both of my parents were in the healthcare profession. So my dad was an OBGYN, but they're both retired, and my mom was a nurse anesthetist. So to me, it was just like I knew that I was going to go into the healthcare route. I didn't know where exactly, which route, but I definitely wanted to do something along those lines. But I learned a lot about, how to run a practice from my dad because he opened up his own practice. So that was something that was kind of instilled in me as well. Even as far as like actual sports go, I was just a chunker as a kid and I was very unathletic. So, whatever shape I'm in now and what I was when I played rugby is not the same as when I was younger. So I didn't really even think about sports medicine as a career at that point. I just knew I wanted to go into healthcare. And, but yeah, it was an interesting ride. I played like classic Pee Wee sports, basketball, football. I was a big swimmer too. And then rugby is kind of where my passion really lies, where it came to sports. So I really enjoyed that a lot. And it was great because it was a lot of teamwork, a lot of physicality. It was a lot of just communication within your team. And it was just a really cool sport. I just like to hit people. So it allowed me to do that. And my size didn't hold me back as much either.
Yeah. That's awesome. So like, as kind of like bringing it back to when you said you were a heavy kid. Is that correct?
Oh, okay. Big kid, yeah.
So I know that for most kids, like it's like a typical story, like, you're growing up and you don't really know what living a healthy lifestyle is. So
Yeah.
how did you notice that you needed to change, or as you were getting into sports, like what inspired you to start taking care of like your body and figuring
Yeah.
out like how the importance of it?
That's a good question. It was actually my mom who got into fitness. And so she tried to help me out. She was like, hey, wouldn't it be nice to lose a little bit of weight? You'd be better at sports. You'd have, be a little bit healthier, right? So she tried to help me out a little bit. But, when you're a kid, it doesn't really stick as well. It wasn't until I got to high school that I really started weightlifting. I got into a little bit more of that health and fitness lifestyle. But she helped to at least give me some of that base as well, because while she was a nurse anesthetist, she was also one of the first certified spinning instructors. So she was big into that whole lifestyle too. But yeah, I got to high school and it slowly started to kind of trickle in, and then college it really took off a little bit more, and then grad school, and then even now it's definitely a part of our lifestyle too. So
That's awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, to me, I think it's really important to set the example for children. Parents, like, we are the example, we are the role models, and it starts from when they're very young. And sometimes like it can be a little difficult, like you don't want to control your children or anything like that, but it's always good to I love how your mom introduced it to you, like saying like, hey, like fitness is good, like working out is
Yeah.
good, like taking care of your body is a good thing. And did you decided that you wanted to get into sports in that time? Is that
No, actually, no. But to your point though, she did it in a more supportive manner rather
right?
than like diminutive or like condescending. It was more of like, hey, I care about you. And I think that's where I think sometimes it can be difficult if you are a bigger kid. You might get bullied, and then you need somewhere to feel supported at home. And she was able to provide that for me. But no, actually, when I went to college, I was pre-med, and I was debating between orthopedic surgery and plastic surgery. So I didn't even think about like orthopedic surgery and sports medicine didn't even occur until college. So I really wasn't quite sure about where my trajectory would land until probably the last half of my collegiate education was when I really decided like, hey, you know what? I don't really like being in the OR. What else can I do in sports medicine that's not necessarily being a strength and conditioning coach, but something that I could still work with athletes in a medical environment? That's when I was like, okay, cool. I can be a doctor of physical therapy, and I can be a specialist in sports medicine, and I can work with teams, I can work with high level athletes. So I just kind of reverse engineered that. And I said, okay, if this is my goal at the time was to be the one of the team docs for a college. And I was like, great, how do you do that? And so I started to reverse engineer that. Okay, I have to do a residency in sports medicine. Okay, then I need to get my DPT. And I just kind of worked backwards to make my end goal fit.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, my brother graduated last year from the university in the grad school in Gainesville. I keep forgetting the name of it.
University of Florida?
Yeah, University of Florida, and as a pharmacist.
Oh, cool.
And he did a lot of school for that. So kind of like, if you can just share with us, like, what was that process like? Because it's not that type of field, that type of career, like the school is not easy. It's something that takes a lot of your time. So how was that process for you, and how did it like impact you?
Yeah, so in college, I was a good student. I wasn't like top of the class. It wasn't until I got to grad school that I was like, I really like this. And once you go from undergrad to the graduate or doctorate level program, it is a totally different animal. It's intense in the fact that you get a lot of information thrown your way. But in college, it's a lot of it, like I was a double major in biology. I had a minor in chemistry and a minor in Italian. So I was studying a lot, but a lot of the classes were designed to weed you out. Once you get to graduate school, it's more like, okay, we want to help keep you in the program. We want to set you up for success. And so that, I think, fostered a healthier education environment for me. And that's when it took off. But, even in grad school, I was helping out with research projects. I was playing rugby at the time too for a team in Cincinnati. Had a blast doing that. And I was also volunteering at my local high school with their athletic training department to get sports medicine experience. Even though I was in a doctor level program, it was nice to have some of that collaboration. So I got a chance to work with athletic trainers and orthopedic surgeons, all on a volunteer basis, just to get exposure to that. And that was really cool. It really helped to narrow in my focus a lot more. So rather than kind of going in undergrad, you have this broad spectrum of like, everybody goes to undergrad. I'm going to be pre-med, I'm going to be a major in biology, whatever. That's like this big wide bucket. The further along you go, the more narrow your scope becomes. And so I found that the further along in my education, the more opportunities I had to specialize in sports medicine, to do things that I really was passionate about. I wasn't passionate about, biochemistry and enzyme rings and things like that, but I was super passionate about how to get somebody from a fracture in their foot to get them back to playing wide receiver on the football field. That was really cool. So then when I went to residency, at the time, so the residencies are different in the physical therapy world. In the medical world, it's a requirement. In the physical therapy world, they're completely optional. At the time that I went through residency, there were only 25 programs across the entire nation that specifically for sports. So they had a ton of applicants. You didn't have to be straight from grad school. You could even come in as an early career professional from the workforce.
Was this in Ohio or you moved? It was in Ohio or somewhere
It was
else?
still in Ohio.
Okay,
So, because I went to University of Cincinnati to get my doctorate.
Okay.
And then, so this was right before I went to the Cleveland Clinic. So there were 25 programs, and the Cleveland Clinic specifically had 32 applicants. And some of us were still in school, some of us were in the workforce. They interviewed 8 and they accepted 1. And it was just wildly competitive. So
Wow.
if you didn't have your shit together, if you weren't passionate about it, if you didn't know what you wanted, you were going to get rejected so fast. And so it was really competitive. But the further along, even in residency that I went, the more I realized, like, hey, you know what? I actually don't want to do collegiate athletes. Like, instead, I'd rather get out of the NCAA world. I knew at that time I didn't want to do the professional athlete world. When I went into residency, one of the things that I really was thinking about was to be one of the team docs for colleges. When I got to be one of the team docs for John Carroll University, it was an amazing experience, but I didn't like that setting as much as I thought I would. But then when I worked for the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Indians, I was like, I don't like this setting either. So when I went to University of Colorado, I worked a lot with adolescent sports medicine, so completely different population. And I got to do more research, and I got to work with, in this case, the professional athletes that I worked with, the pro rugby team, were a sport that was really something of an area of passion for me.
Wow.
So it was
So
a
you
lot of
enjoyed it more working with young kids.
In Colorado, I did, and then I slowly transitioned out of team sport athletes into what we treat now at Tideline, which is more of the recreational fitness enthusiast athletes. So it's kind of taken a different trajectory than I thought it would from the time that I was in undergrad or even in grad school. Because if you had asked me first year at University of Cincinnati in grad school, like, where do you see yourself in 10 years? I've been like, great, I'm going to be, like, I got an offer to work for Stanford after residency. And I was like, oh, that would have been my dream job in PT school, but it wasn't. And I turned it down to go to University of Colorado to work in their sports medicine division because I got a chance to work with a little bit of a wider variety. And so now we see a big variety at our practice now, and I like that a lot more. I didn't want to be pigeonholed or have too narrow of a scope.
And of course, you have to have passion for it, right?
100%.
Yeah, like being in the medical field, you definitely have to have passion for what you're doing, and it shows in you that you have passion for helping people, and that's interesting that you were able to shift the type of field that you wanted to do. So you're like, oh no, I don't want to be an OR. I want to help, athletes. Like it's more fun.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people do it just more for like the money. And then when you do it for the money, it's just like a checklist. Like, okay, go. I mean, because I've experienced doctors, in that way, and it's pretty shitty.
It's terrible. People have a terrible patient experience. And you seek help from somebody. It doesn't matter if it's a coach, a doctor, whoever, you seek help from somebody, and you want to make sure that during that state of vulnerability, putting yourself out there, just requesting help is a huge step for a lot of people, that you want to make sure that that patient experience that they have is unparalleled. And if you don't have it, I think that's shame on the provider more than anything, or shame on the coach, whomever, right? Because I actually, not many people know this, but I actually almost got into strength and conditioning and getting my PhD in exercise physiology. So that was my backup plan. If things didn't work out in sports medicine, I was going to actually get a PhD in exercise physiology, and I was going to be, for those who know who he is, Dr. Mike Israetel, like I would have gone that route and would have been like, cool, I'm just going to nerd out on this stuff. I'm going to be a strength and conditioning coach. In grad school, I was the strength and conditioning coach for University of Cincinnati's rugby team. So it allowed me to work on my communication skills. It allowed me to work on my leadership skills because I had this coaching experience, and I can take a team and lead them through something and make them successful at whatever they want to do. In this case, to play rugby. And that was my goal. That was my passion. So it still shines a little bit when I am with patients now, that it's still a very coaching environment. And I think people forget that in healthcare, that's exactly what it is. You don't want a shitty patient experience. You want somebody who's going to be comforting, patient with you, somebody who's going to educate, somebody who's going to listen to you, right? And that is some of the qualities that make a really good coach. And so that's a lot of the model to which I attributed, to aspire to with Tideline.
Yeah, I love that. And when it comes to learning something and mastering your craft, right, you have to go through different avenues and like learn so many different things. It applies the same thing with jobs. Like you get all these different jobs, but at the end of the day, you have to think, if you think about it, there's a purpose to it because you learn different skills. Okay, like money or like reconciling like data work or just whatever it could be. Like you're probably going to use that later on in like your career or your business or whatever. So it's always, that's great that you're so open-minded and you want to be like that. You can't have a fixed mindset.
No.
Yeah.
Because, especially whether it's business ownership, a healthcare provider, all the different hats that I have right now, you have to be open to receiving feedback, whether it's from your team, yourself, patients, maybe the metrics that you track for your business, right? You need to be open to that. And you also need to be open to the fact that things are going to evolve, right? So knowledge has expanded. The way that I practice sports medicine now is very different than when I was in residency. And that's a good thing. And so it's important for me to stay on top of that. If I'm so narrow-minded and thinking my way or the highway, I'm going to be one of those old farts that just doesn't know what they're talking about, and they're so dogmatic.
Doesn't excel.
Exactly, and you're going to just plateau, and you're going to be your own ceiling effect. And I didn't want that. One of my things is I don't want any cap. I don't want any ceiling on anything that I do. I want to be able to take it as far as I want to take it.
Yeah, I always say this: there's never like an end. There's always so much more. Because when you climb up one mountain, there's like so many other mountains that you're like, oh, let me climb up that mountain, like let me go up on that one, and then I'll go up into the other one, and it's like, that's so important when it comes to growth. And I always say that this is my motto: if I'm not growing, I'm dying.
100%, right? Because the world keeps moving. Whether you move with it is your call, right? So
right.
If you don't, it's kind of your responsibility, right? To evolve with whatever it is. Yeah.
And when you don't push yourself to grow or reach the next level, like, okay, what else can I learn? How else can I evolve in my business? And even this just applies to life too, like in your relationships, how you show up as a person, what are your ways of being, etc. So it's like there's so much room for growth. And if you stay stagnant, then you're just like a robot. You just end up being like a robot, just doing the same thing over and over and over and over again, So I always say, it's like, if you don't take risks, you're not willing to learn, are you really living? Yeah.
And I was so risk averse before starting Tideline too. Like I went kicking and screaming. I was like, no, I did residency, I did research, I worked for teams, and I worked for big hospital organizations. Like, no, I was very risk averse. And it is, I felt like I was falling behind, not just the times, but I felt like I was falling behind on like the potential that I had. And that's what I didn't like.
Yeah, yeah. So let's talk a little bit about that. So
Yeah.
after grad school, did you open Tideline or was there
No.
like a process? Take us
Yeah.
through a journey.
Sure. So basically, when people ask me about the practice and they say something like, "Hey, how long have you had Tideline for?" And we're coming up on our 4-year anniversary in November, and I tell people too that even though the practice has only been open for 4 years, the things that went into it, mainly a lot of the work and education and mastering my craft, has actually been going on for 12 years. And so when you go to start your own business or start your own practice, you can't do it unless you have really evolved in the thing that you're going to do. And that is one of the things that I attribute to the success that we've had so far. And there's so many other things that I'm grateful for, but I think that is having a really good clinical passion, a really good clinical skill set is what allowed me to be successful in Tideline. So no, I went from residency at the Cleveland Clinic to University of Colorado to I worked for a private practice, a sports medicine clinic in West Palm Beach. I was a professor for a little bit, for about a year, and then I worked for the Cleveland Clinic Florida in Fort Lauderdale. And we were trying to get our sports medicine department to really expand a little bit more. But we were getting a lot of pushback from corporate. And it wasn't until my wife is an OR nurse and she was an administrator for a same day surgery center. She got offered a position from Delray Beach on the Atlantic side to here in Lakewood Ranch. And so I was like, great, like, I think this is a great opportunity. I wasn't super satisfied with my position at the Cleveland Clinic. I thought it'd be a great fit for us as a family to move. And so I was like, did the classic thing. I was like, cool, I'll hop on LinkedIn and Indeed and see what jobs are out there. Didn't really like it. Interviewed with IMG, wasn't super crazy about that. And I was like, there's no sports medicine in Lakewood Ranch. Like, why does that not exist? My wife told me, she's like, hey, I've been telling you for a long time to open up your own practice. And every time you shoot it down. And so she's like, why don't you open up your own practice? And I was like, I don't know. So what happened was about maybe 3 weeks before we moved over, I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it. And I'm just going to go all in. We call it burn the ships method. I was going to move from Delray Beach to Sarasota, didn't know a single soul. I was going to go all in full time in my business. No side hustle, no part time job. Like I was going to be full time with Tideline. And it was scary as hell. I did not like that at all. I'm so type A, metrics, by the book, like everything has a guideline, and I had no idea what I was doing. I knew how to treat athletes. I had no idea how to open up a practice. So when we were moving, my wife was selling a lot of furniture. I was teaching clinicians how to do dry needling at the time. So I was at a course teaching that, and all of a sudden I come home and she had sold our couch. And I was like, well, shit, I got to design our website. So I pulled the mattress from our guest room out, threw it in our living room. And I'm like, I stayed up till like 1 o'clock in the morning, listening to like tropical house music and designing our website.
Wow.
And I was like, you know what?
Do you have pictures of that?
No,
Oh.
no. It'd be like, you'd have like, just hair everywhere. It would look like a hot mess, right?
That's part of the journey.
Oh, no, no. It would be super scruffy. But no, it sucked. And I was like, man, I don't know if I can do this. Like maybe this wasn't a good idea. But the more I started to flesh out the business, starting to think about what systems I was going to put into place, things that I was going to offer, the more it kind of gained some momentum, and I started to feed off of that. And I was like, okay, the next step is I'm going to create a name. And, I came up with Tideline. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to call my friend in Denver who's a graphic designer. She helped me create all of our logos. Then I was like, okay, I'm going to now start to think about what I'm going to use for documentation, how I'm going to collect payment, what I'm going to charge, where am I going to practice at? Because we're going to move to Lakewood Ranch in like 2 weeks. I have nowhere to treat patients. So I was like, you know what I'm going to do? I was doing CrossFit at the time. I said, I'm going to drop into 5 different CrossFit gyms with the intention that I would like to sublease from them. And I'll set up a table and I'll have some supplies there and I'll just start real bare minimum just to kind of get my name out there, build a little proof of concept and really be able to start the journey there. And that's exactly what we did. So we moved over, and then we moved over on like a Thursday. Monday through Friday, dropped into 5 different CrossFit gyms, and that sucked. I am an introvert, so going to doing gym drop-ins as part of my job was terrible. Like, I love working out, don't get me wrong. I love talking to people. Like, I really do enjoy getting to know people. But when you have to do it for work and you're naturally introverted, like, now you've got to do this CrossFit workout. You've got to know where the gym is. Like, where do I put my backpack? Where do I fill up my water bottle? Like, who do I talk to? Like, I got to do like 10 minutes of mobility because I'm old as shit and I got a million rugby injuries, right? So I'm like, what do I do? So I kind of learned how to be conversational about my practice without being douchey about it, and just talking about trying to demonstrate value and being very inquisitive about these gyms and the communities that they had. So I dropped into 5 really great CrossFit gyms. I thought I'd get really good workout, like, feel good. I felt like shit because those 5 different programs, right? Like, it wasn't consistent at all, right? So like, one gym had power cleans on Monday, and then 2 days later I was doing a million power cleans on Wednesday. Wow. And I'm like, my collarbone's bruised, like I feel like crap. It was like that movement pattern's fried. I remember one gym that I dropped into, they have, it's shout out to Kevin Moore with Rackstar Athletics. So they have something called the level method, where you can test into a certain level, and that will help you to figure out what the workout should be, so that it kind of evens the playing field based off of where you're at in your fitness journey. So he's like, he's looking at this chart. He's like, where do you feel like you are? And I just pointed to like the elite level. I'm like, I think I'm there, kind of half joking. He's like, fine, let's do it then. So I'm going through this workout, and everybody else is doing lighter weight, fewer reps, and all this stuff. He's sitting there and he's watching me from across the gym, just watching me move, because he knew what I did for work, right? And I'm like just struggling with thrusters, running, like all of my weaknesses, right? He's like just watching me move, kind of crosses his legs, just real stoic about it. And then I was dead
Look
last.
at this young grasshopper.
Look at this douchebag that walked in my gym telling me that he was an elite level athlete. Like, look at him dying right now. So I'm like rolling. I was so melodramatic. I'm like rolling on the ground, and I'm dying when the workout's done. The last one finished. While I'm still trying to catch my breath, he squats down next to me. He's like, so why should I send my members to your practice? It was like, I couldn't even catch my breath. Like trying to like talk to him and like yeah, and I'm like because I don't suck, like I don't know, man, like I had no idea what to say to that, right? It's like, you were so fatigued out.
Yeah.
But it was a really smart business move by him, right? Because I was able to articulate. He's an amazing coach. They have a great gym, and we've worked a lot.
That was also a lesson too.
Oh yeah, don't put yourself as elite. So you're not elite, right? But no, it was a lot of fun. But you have to put yourself out there a little bit. And so I subleased from the kitchen of a CrossFit gym, and that's where the practice started.
That is so beautiful.
Yeah.
I love that. Like, you literally took us on a journey.
Yeah.
And what it comes down to is just, a lot of people are not willing to take risks, and people just don't pursue their dreams because of the fear of failure, the fear of like, what if this doesn't work? What if I'm not good enough? All of these like all of these lies that they just like tell themselves, because it is risky. It is very scary. It's out of like the comfort zone. But when it comes to like starting a business or starting something new, you have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, for sure.
4 years later, it still doesn't stop.
Yeah.
Like, I'm still comfortable with being, like, I'm still uncomfortable a lot.
Yeah.
But it, kind of to your point, it pushes you to be better,
Absolutely.
It becomes, rather than defeating, it becomes more of a impetus to be a better business owner, a better leader, a better employer, or whatever, right? And that's what it's about, right? Is to continue to evolve.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if you don't, you're at a standstill.
Yeah. And I don't want to say self-sabotage, because I feel like now that I'm learning more about certain things in that term, I feel like if you're doing something new, yes, you can have this story in your mind like, oh, maybe I'm not good enough. It's like, okay, you're not good enough yet.
Correct.
It's like, okay, that's a story for now, but okay, yeah, I don't know how to do it, but I'm going to learn.
Oh, yeah.
It's just like, for example, like for me, when I started my first business venture, I was kind of like an introvert too. Like I was now I'm like a good balance, but like I was an introvert too. And I was always super shy. And my first business venture, I was like in a network marketing company, and like I was doing like sales, and I was a coach and all these things. And I remember when they were like, okay, you have to go out and talk to people. I was like, the first time I ever passed out a flyer, I froze. I was like, hi. You know, it's just like, I was like, I'm scared, but I'm going to do it anyways. And with the repetition and like putting yourself out there more and more and more, it becomes easier.
It does. It just becomes the first gym drop in is always terrible. Like I still remember the first patient, even when I was in residency, my first patient that I ever saw as a newly licensed physical therapist never came back. I demonstrated zero value to her and she never came back. And I still remember everything about her to this day.
Wow.
Because it sticks with me. I'm like, man, you're a real shit doctor. You need to be a better doctor, bro. Like, otherwise, you're not going to make it. And you're in residency. Like, this is where you're supposed to shine. But yeah, you have to be able to be willing to learn and to be vulnerable. I mean, there are times we'll try ideas within Tideline. It could blow up or it could be wildly successful. I'm okay either way because I'd rather know than not know. And I'd rather take that chance than have a ceiling on myself.
Yeah. Trying to stay like in a safe little box.
Exactly.
Yeah. Because then you're always going to wonder, what if? What if I did that?
Oh,
what
yeah.
if I did this?
I mean, even the way, so, I mean, I knew how to treat athletes. And when I started Tideline, I was primarily treating CrossFit athletes because that's what I was into at the time. And I mean, I was a great clinician, didn't know shit about business, right? Didn't know what to track, how to track it. And I joined a mastermind, a business mastermind mentorship program, and they helped me learn the business part of it. And that was wildly valuable, but you have to learn so many different things. And thank God that I was a decent clinician. Otherwise, things could have fallen in pretty easily because I'm learning so much about how to run a successful business, right? But I mean, even just like I didn't know how to use Squarespace for our website. And here I am on the floor on a guest room mattress in Delray Beach at like 1 o'clock in the morning, jamming out to tropical house beats. Like, I didn't know about that. It took me so long to design our website when now it would have taken me easily half the time. But you have to learn how to
You
do
have
it.
to learn. You have to learn and put yourself out there, because a lot of people just go for like the instant gratification, right? Like, oh, if I do this, it has to work. And it's not like that. The delayed gratification, I always say this, it's where you build character. It's the process that really matters, not the destination,
Oh,
not like
100%.
just getting there. I love that. Yeah.
You learn so much about yourself as an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Like, I learned more about myself in the last 4 years than I have in the 34 years preceding that. Just because you're going through so much growth at that time and things are moving so fast. Like, Tideline took off so fast, I didn't have time to think about it. We've had so many changes before, both good and bad. And sometimes people ask me like, well, how do you feel about that? And I'm like, my feelings are irrelevant. Like, this is the shit that needs to get done right now. And I didn't recognize that about myself. I always thought that I was kind of whiny, and I used to have a problem with that. I used to be really like a Debbie Downer and kind of a complainer and things like that growing up. And then now I'm just like, no, like, it's go time. Like, F your feelings. It's just, this is what you need to do for the business or for whatever.
All right, guys, we'll get right back into the episode. I just wanted to take a quick break here to share with you guys that I do not make any money on this podcast. My goal and my purpose with Inherent Success is to be that guide for individuals in their self-discovery journey. So if you found any value in this episode, make sure to like, to subscribe. And if you know anyone that could benefit from the episode or the podcast overall, you can share with a friend as well. Now, let's get back into it. And what would you say would have been like the hardest part growing your business? Because a lot of people don't understand what it takes to own a business.
Yeah. I think the one of the hardest parts was to get out of my more introverted shell to take a risk, so to become less risk averse and more risk acceptable. The other thing is that you have to be willing to put your ego aside. So when I talk about Tideline, it has nothing to do with me specifically other than I'm the owner. So the things that we might say in a positive manner, not brag about, but say in a positive light about Tideline, I'm not taking any much credit for that. I'm taking credit for starting Tideline, but the success that we've had is more because I've learned how to scale past myself. So things like that, I think, are really important to learn for people, because otherwise, if your ego is surrounded by it, I think you're going to take things personally. You're going to have this emotional volatility about it, right? if you take your ego out of it and you build a brand or a company, like for example, I built Tideline, now I am the owner of Tideline, but I'm removed to some degree from it. And I think that's what helps me make better decisions. That's what helps me to be able to talk about my practice without seeming like I'm bragging. Or I could tell you all the weaknesses or things that we're looking to optimize, right? Without feeling bad about it and knowing that we have an amazing practice, right? But I have to be able to compartmentalize or separate that. Otherwise, I'm going to get burned so hard.
Yeah, like letting go of control.
And letting go of some of the feelings about it, right? Like we could have a really great month and I don't celebrate the highs or sing the blues and the lows. So we have a great month. I'm not looking as like, hell yeah, I did that. We have a great month, or we have a really like, we have a month where we're helping a ton of people. I don't look at that as like, I did that. I look at that as like, hell yeah, like our team did that. I talk about Tideline as a we a lot. If you hear me talk in outside of this podcast, a lot of times I'm talking about we, us. I'm using first person plural. I'm part of the Tideline team. I just happen to be the owner and founder of it. But when it comes down to it, like we're all part of the Tideline machine.
Playing team.
Yeah, exactly.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to.
Yeah. No, I agree 100% because yes, with just one person you can do a lot, but with a group of people you can do so many. You can go so far.
Oh yeah.
And having that culture, I love that mindset. I really do, because it's not about, at the end of the day, it's not about you, it's about the people, like the impact that you're making. You're helping your team. Your team is helping other people. So it's not all about like, yeah, like it's just dropping the ego and I'm making it about like it's a me show. It's like a team, a group, we're making an impact.
People will come up like they'll come up to me knowing that I'm the owner, even though I don't work with them. They're patients of part of our other team, or they work with other members of our team, and they'll be like, "I just want to say you have an incredible business." I'm like, "Yes, we do," right? Or like, Jamie helped me out so much. Michaelina, our massage therapist, is brilliant at what she does, and you are so lucky. I'm like, yes, we are lucky to have her as part of our team. Like, we lucked out by offering them a position to join to be part of Tideline. And so I think that's what really helps to make sure that you're able to not get so focused on me. But even when I was solo, I always knew that like I was proud of the work that I did and the people that I helped, not walking around like I was the shit because I was able to relieve somebody's shoulder pain who's never had, been able to bench press for 8 years without any shoulder pain. And in 2 visits, now they're bench pressing and they hit a PR, no pain whatsoever. I'm really happy about that, but I don't sit there and say I did that. I sit there and I was like, a patient of Tideline came in and we were able to help them out.
I love that. That's so true. Yeah, it's about playing team and making the impact that the team makes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what would you say, because you know how the internet is, there's a lot of information. You know what I'm about to say. There's a lot of information out there.
Yeah.
Between TikTok and Instagram and YouTube. And a lot of the information can be conflicting when it comes to health and wellness and injuries and like and everything particular that has to do with the body. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of like I call it a show. Everyone is an expert. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden you're like, okay, you healed your gut microbiome, so you're an expert. And follow my gut protocol. Not to bash anyone.
Pay $500 and I'll tell you to eat Greek yogurt.
Yeah. It's interesting. But what would be the best advice for you as a physician, you as an expert in what you do, like for people that are looking for consulting or like looking for, let's say if there's like an athlete that's like looking for tips or anything that can help them recover, or if they have some injuries, like what would be like the best advice for anyone looking for a source?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is that when you look, you have to know, like, and trust that person, right? Mm-hmm. And so when you get information from somebody, KLT, know, like, and trust is the biggest thing, right? So you need to make sure that that person is the best source of information. It can be very difficult. Like our healthcare system and our fitness and wellness sphere has a lot of misleading information. One of the
Yeah.
things that I used to struggle with in the beginning was people would come in who had seen other providers, even, and within our area, that were just treated incorrectly, things that was pseudoscience, things that don't even make sense. The hardest part is to not bash them. And so, one of the things, if you're out there scrolling through Instagram, is you want to see, it's hard to fact check people, but you want to be very inquisitive about that. Does that really make sense? Like, let's think about that. Can you really completely hack your shoulder pain, right? How do you know that your shoulder pain is the exact situation that the person is describing? Do this one tip and you'll never have Achilles pain when you run. How do you know that, right? Like, I think you just have to be a little bit more conscientious about the information that's out there. Not so much in a negative tone, but more in a neutral tone of like, hey, it's not that this person is mean or that they're ill-willed towards me. It's just that some people just don't know their stuff, or they're just putting out information that is fear-mongering, or it's too general and it doesn't really quite fit. And so my biggest thing is that even like stuff that I don't know about, I use that lens of more in being inquisitive. And I think you just have to stay curious. Otherwise, you're going to all of a sudden convince yourself that you are able to do this hack and this is going to take away your back pain. And then you get really pissed when it doesn't. And I think the other thing too is that if you actually go to see a provider, make sure that they're able to tell you what's going on and why and how they're going to fix it. If they can't do those three things, you're going to the wrong person. Even on, patient will call up, say for example, they heard about us through a friend that we helped them out. And they call us up and they say, hey, I've been dealing with some back pain. Is that something you can help me out with? I'm on the phone with them and I'm still able to like tell them about our process. They come into our office and we're able to do a thorough clinical exam, and I can tell them a little bit more about what's going on. I can tell them a little bit more about why this occurred, and I can tell them a little bit more about what we're going to do to address that. And if you can't hit all three of those milestones, then you're doing the patient a disservice, because we live in an information age, and if you're not able to provide accurate information, they're going to look for it elsewhere, and the elsewhere may not be accurate, and now all of a sudden you could be in a really sticky situation.
Yeah, I agree 100%. There's just so much information out there, and a lot of them can be misleading. Like, excuse me, anything that I see on Instagram and like YouTube or whatever, it's like, oh, try my glute, like for example, workouts. Try my glute workout. It's like, okay, or like, oh, this person was doing a hack squat. Okay, why are you using the hack squat?
Right.
What is it for? Or like the pendulum squat. I've never used that, but because to me, I don't think I need it.
Right.
But it's like, what's the science? I always think, okay, what's the science behind this? How is this going to benefit my body, the way I move my body, and also foods too? And just because Cheryl says I'm doing the carnivore diet, I'm not going to do the carnivore diet because my body is different. Everyone is so bio-individual that it's really important to really just like do your research. Like, I had a conversation with a friend and he was like, yeah, I do a cone plunge every day. And I was like, she's like, you should try it. And I'm like, but why?
Yeah.
Like, oh, because it has great benefits. I'm like, what? Like, like I told him, I'm like, honestly, I'm not going to be like, yeah, I'm going to do it, because I want to know the science behind it. I'm sure it's great, but like,
yeah. I had a mentor in residency. He was my mentor when I worked with the Cleveland Cavaliers. And he sat me down one time and he's like, listen, Michael, throughout your career, you're going to see these wild trends that are going to occur in sports medicine. And he said, you want to be in the bell curve. There's going to be people that are going to be at the front end of some new trendy thing, some flashy object. You don't want to be at the front because it could be going down a completely wrong rabbit hole. You don't want to be at the back end because now you're way behind the times. You want to kind of be right in that sweet spot in that bell curve. I'll be damned if like 3 years later cupping came out. And like that was all the rage for the longest time. Cupping doesn't really fix anything. I was about to say it doesn't do anything, but what it does is it provides a similar mechanism to help to temporarily decrease the perception of pain, the same way that you would, the same nerve fibers that you would activate if you were to bump your elbow and lightly rub your elbow. that's essentially what cupping does. It gives you bruises because you burst capillaries that are superficial in your skin, not because you broke up or pulled out fascia and tension, right? We know that through evidence and research. If I was on the front end of cupping, I mean, I would be like, oh, cool, this is the greatest thing ever since sliced bread, right? And then all of a sudden it's like, oh no, it wasn't. And then now it's like, well, shit, now I look like some quack, right? And you have to stay inquisitive, and you have to stay within that bell curve. I think people have shiny object syndrome, and clinicians do,
Yeah.
people do in general, and because they want that instant gratification. And I mean, I know, like, I mean, you talk about fitness, right? You see all of these misconceptions, right? If you do this workout, if you take this drug, this peptide, this whatever, all of a sudden you're going to transform into this influencer that you see in front of you. And it's like, no, bro, that's years of hard work and crazy dieting that you probably aren't going to do in 3 months, right? So you just have to be a little bit, have that inquisitive mindset about that.
100%. Yeah, I always tell everyone, like, just do your research. Like,
Yeah.
do your research. Go to like a coach, someone that they're certified, they know what they're doing. Don't just like follow an influencer that said, oh, you do my 90-day butt routine. Like it's very important that I look at, first of all, for me, like I look at credentials. To me, that's everything. It's really important. And I just look at the science. Like, why is this going to help me? Is this going to help me?
Sure.
So that's something for those of you guys that are watching and listening. It's really important when it comes to your health and fitness. Do your research. And to me, also, you want to be careful with the ones that think that they know it all. Like, yeah, I know it all. It's like, yeah, it's very important to keep an eye out for that, because it's good to me, like when I meet someone, they're like, that's a good question. Let me find that out for you. I really don't know.
I'll tell patients straight up, like, we as a scientific community don't have a good answer for that. They would be like, well, why did this happen? And I'm like, you know what, to be honest with you, we don't know. Like, we have some ideas. These are some of the theories that we have based off of, our exam today. This is what I'm thinking, but honestly, we don't know. And I am 100% okay telling people that. Because if you offer them something that is not true, ethically it's not good, and then if it comes out...
It's misleading, for
It
sure.
is super misleading, for sure.
Yeah, I agree. No, I love that. So let's talk a little bit about, like, your marriage. So
Yes.
how did you meet your wife, and how is it, also like working together as a couple? Running a business. I know it's your business, but of course, like you said, it's a team thing. But also, I know she's very involved, as we were talking a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
So how did you meet her, and how did she get involved into Tideline?
We met through the power of the internet. So the internet brought us together. So we, Ashley and I are both from Cincinnati, Ohio. She's an OR nurse, and she had taken a bunch of travel positions and ended up landing a permanent position or a full-time position over in West Palm Beach. While I was in West Palm Beach, I had moved there, somewhat recently, and just meeting people, dating world, whole can of worms. Really tough, right? Like, it sucks. I'm introverted. I'm not going to meet somebody at the bar. I mean, I was doing CrossFit at the time, but I was like, I don't know if I want to, like, do that whole CrossFit love triangle drama shit. Like, no. So we actually met on Match.com, and I joke, she hates when I make this joke. I joke all the time that I was like, yeah, I put us in as an application to be on the Match.com commercial when they used to run those, and that old fucker, like, he completely rejected our conversation, like, our application.
God.
But yeah, we met online, and we've been married 5.5 years. We've been together for 7. And yeah, we just hit it off right away, and they are exactly true when they say that when you know, you know. I knew by the end of our first date that this was going to be something real. I knew by the end of our 3rd date that I was going to marry her.
Oh.
Yeah, and so it's been awesome. So she is an OR nurse by trade, and so she is really developing her passion for fitness and health as well. So what she's done is now 2 days a week, she comes into our office, and she helps me manage the day-to-day operations of the practice. She also offers personal training and nutrition coaching. I was fortunate enough that the Business Mastermind offered me a position to be a coach with them. So I'm a business coach as well.
Wow.
And so due to those extra responsibilities, I needed to be able to pull myself a little bit back from the business, and I needed some help to fill in that gap. And Ashley's great at that. So she knows me, she knows the practice, she's watched me design the website from the mattress.
The mattress.
She's watched me, listened to me talk about carrying all my equipment up the stairs and down the stairs when I first started in the second floor kitchen of a CrossFit gym. She's seen the whole evolution, and so it's so nice to have somebody who you're so connected with to now be connected with something that you're so passionate about, like the business you own. And she's been amazing, and she's so talented at being able to be a great person to bounce ideas off of. She's very intuitive with the team. It's nice because sometimes people will talk to her in a different way because she's not the boss, right? So they'll share some different things with her, and so it's great because I obviously trust her because we're married, and it's great because she's able to really help me out with that.
I love that, yeah. And how has it been, like, working together?
It was the Lord's work at first, that's for sure. But, so I'm really big into systems. And so with the practice, we have a system for a lot of different things, not necessarily patient care, but a lot of the business part of things. So we have a patient journey that starts from when somebody calls in to their first visit to how things go throughout their entire plan of care. We have systems for, how we contact people to follow them up. 2 days after everybody's first appointment, they get a check-in from us to see how they're doing, make sure that everything is still feeling good, and how was their experience. And so a lot of that was, I had to help her to integrate into our systems. She's seen me do it, she's seen me develop them, but she hasn't done them herself. So it was interesting. We would role play, for example, on how to do discovery calls. So when somebody calls in, how to speak to them about, what it is that we do. We're a very unique practice because we're 60 minutes, we're one-on-one, we are out of network with insurance. So you can use your out-of-network benefits, but we're not in-network like if you were to go to Coastal Orthopedics or 360. So it's a little bit of a different feel, and so there's a different demonstration of value that needs to be there. And so, we have like a 4-page outline about how to do that during our discovery calls. And so, now she's amazing at them. But, I think it just takes some repetitions.
Yeah.
And it's different when it's your wife because we've had plenty of employees at Tideline, and training employees who you're not married to, super easy, right? It's super objective, and you can give them constructive feedback, and they don't, they take it in a certain way. I love Ashley, but yeah, it was at the beginning. I think there was an adjustment about how to be able to balance being the owner of the business that she helps me out with, and also how to remain married and husband and wife, right?
Yeah.
How to not get divorced and me sleeping on a foam roller in the middle of our office while she's hanging out with the dog, right? So I wanted to avoid that situation. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I get that because it's like when when me and Jonathan started working in the farmers markets, it was just me and him. And it, it's like in the beginning, it was like, it was also the same thing. It was like, it was a rumble. It would be a rumble sometimes because he's very like, he's creative and like, like we were talking, like he's very creative. He's like, but also he's very analytical and like very controlling. So, but I'm very like controlling and analytical. He's more creative than me. So we kind of like, but now, we've learned to like work together, and it's more of like I'll tell him like most of his ideas are amazing, and most of the time like when he does his own thing, it's great. But then I tell him, why don't you do this? He's like, no, and I'm like, okay. It goes away. I'm like, okay, and then he comes back, yeah, you're right. I'm like, I told you.
And it's got to be real subtle, right? Like it can't rub it in their face, right? It's just like, that's cool. Like you got to play it off real chill. Like I describe working with your significant other as a DIY project, right? So if you were to remodel your kitchen or your bathroom and you do it together, it's a big project. There's a lot of emotions, a lot of fatigue, a lot of just a lot going on. It's a very intense situation. And then all of a sudden you're next to somebody that you love dearly and you're like, dude, I didn't realize how loud you breathe. Or like, why do you walk so loud? Or why do you stand this way? And it's like all of these.
Why do you write that way?
Yeah, exactly. And it's just like everything becomes magnified, right? But you know at the end that it's something that I love it because I've spent the last 4 years really building something, she's been a huge part of that in an indirect way. And now I love the fact that we can have an opportunity for her to have a more direct involvement with it, and it's been great. So
and
I really
create together.
Exactly. It's like that DIY project where we're covered in dust yelling at each other now becomes like kind of taking a step back and be like, we did this together. Good job, dude. Like, this was really great,
Yeah,
you know?
I love that.
And that's what, like, that, again, it's like the ego's out of it. And it's just like, wow, like, we created this thing together. And, like, look at how awesome it is. Not how awesome we are, but, like, look how awesome this beautiful thing that we created is.
I love that. Yeah, it's like when you run a business and you include your partner, or even when the business is you and your partner, you kind of have to when you're outside of it, it's like, okay, you put your relationship hat on, your marriage hat on, and then when you're in there, it's like, okay, business hat on. Yeah.
Yeah, she's I asked her to do to help me brainstorm some ideas about a particular project, and I remember I had Tuesdays and Thursdays are some of my longest days. I usually work 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. So, I remember just like getting ready to meal prep, cook my last meal for the day at like 8:15, and then I was gonna pack, all my meals for the following day and get ready to go. And she's like, "Hey, so I had some ideas for the project." I'm like, "You know what? It's 8:15. I'm exhausted. Like, let's just save that for tomorrow."
Yeah.
Like, and it's just, I think you have to be able to separate that a little bit. Otherwise, you blend both of them, and it's like, it's too much.
Yeah, you gotta have that, like, you gotta have that break. Like, okay, when it's work, and then when it's like, okay, time for our marriage, it's time for our marriage.
Correct.
Yeah.
And it's nice, and I think that's why her transitioning part-time has been so good, because, I'll go to Tideline and I'll go to work without her a few days a week, and she'll ask me about how things went with something that she has firsthand knowledge about. And then I also get to ask her about her day, and she tells me something that is completely different from Tideline, like her work as an OR nurse, or her work as a personal trainer, and she can tell me about the clients she worked with, right? And so it now becomes kind of like a nice transition into that.
Like something different each time.
Yeah.
I love that. That's awesome. And let's talk a little bit about your podcast.
Yeah.
So when did you start the podcast, and how'd you get into that?
Yeah, I started the podcast in late 2021, and it was after we hired our first clinician. And what I really wanted to do was to try to reach a wider audience without being directly in front of them. So in the beginning part of the business, the best way that I found to market was to go to gyms, to drop into gyms, to do marketing events, and do a lot of that guerrilla grassroots marketing. The podcast originally started off as kind of like a pseudo marketing, but also a pseudo like passion project. I used to be a professor, so I will talk way too much, and so I just needed an outlet for that. And so some of the early episodes are literally just monologues of me talking about a particular topic. Some of them were like, what is dry needling? Or talking about a particular, like, just a concept in general. Or a few episodes, I would do real patient examples of people that had come into our office and, their past and as well. But the best part about the podcast now is doing this format, which is interviews. And now it allows me to learn from somebody else, right, who's in a similar business, right, and something to do with health, wellness, fitness, whatever. And it's just really cool because you get a chance to really do a deep dive, like you did with me today, on somebody's background, and just like you did and you shared with us on our podcast. And that's what's really cool, is that we both have a platform to be able to do that now, where we can share people. I remember I would interview gym owners from some of the CrossFit gyms, and people would come into my office, they're like, I had no idea about so-and-so, who's the head coach or the owner. They're like, I had no idea about them. Like, that was a super cool story that I provided a platform to draw that out of people and to allow them a space to share that.
I love that. Yeah, because everyone has a story.
Yeah.
And I love, that's what this podcast is about. It's about transformational stories. It's like, wow, like I didn't know you went through that. Kind of like when you shared how you like made your first website on a mattress, I was like, wow, that's so cool.
Intense, yeah.
yeah. It's like so cool to see or to hear someone take us through a journey of like how they were before and what got them to where they are today. So it's beautiful.
Yeah, and I think that's like our podcasts are part informational, but also a lot of it is just learning about people. Because at the end of the day, even though we do sports medicine, we're in the business of helping people, right? The same thing that coaches are helping people, the same thing that, there's a lot of service-based industries that are literally in the business of people. And if we lose sight of that, then we've lost the mark completely. So the podcast is a great way for me to interact with somebody on a different level in a different environment that's not so caregiver to patient relationship. And I think that platform is beautiful because I don't I like being a caregiver, but I also really enjoy my non-healthcare practitioner conversations too.
Yeah.
They're a little bit like I feel like I could just kind of be a little bit more disarmed. I feel like I could be a little bit more of my own personality comes out a little. I mean, my personality comes out in clinic, but you feel like you don't have to. There's not a certain feel to it. There's no give and take. It's just kind of like, hey, this is a friendship, or this is a great like business relationship that we have, and I think that's what makes it so fun.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm surprised to say you're an introvert because you seem you speak very well, and like you're
Appreciate
very
that.
yeah, and like you talk a lot, and like you're very like you engage in the conversation. So I'm like wow, you're an introvert.
My wife didn't believe me until I started this practice, and then she would see me come home after like working on the business, working with patients for so long, and just like crash on the couch. And I
Oh,
was like,
wow.
I just need to recharge my social battery. And like, if you were to ask my parents, they'd be like, my mom used to tell me all the time, she's like, I'm kind of worried about you. Like I don't know if you're just
Yeah.
going to be like one of those awkward, weird kids that doesn't say anything. She was like, you want to get married, right? Like, and I'm
Aw.
like, yeah. I'm like, I'm just a goofy, awkward kid. Like, I don't know what to tell you. I love Dungeons and Dragons and jazz music, and then I also like hitting people on the rugby pitch. So
Yeah.
it was just like that's just kind of where I fit in. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's good that, building the business and even the podcast too, it brings that extrovert out of you.
I think so, and I think it's hopefully for the better. I think the world has
Yeah.
just the right amount of Micheal Sclafani. I think two more of it would be too much. So we'll put a cap on that one.
All right, Michael. Well, we did reach our time,
Sure.
and this was such a great episode, and I loved everything that we talked about. I'm so excited for you for Tideline and where you're going to take it in the future, and also the podcast too. One last question. So this is something that I ask all of my guests. It's kind of like to end it on a nice note. So what does inherent success mean to you?
So inherent success means to me that you have it in you a certain potential, and I believe that it is something that's a part of you. It's inherent. It's part of your nature, and I think that it is your job to be able to bring that to the world and bring that to the universe. And so we all have a certain potential, a certain archetype that is truly needed in this world. And I think that having a space to do that, whether you're younger or older when it comes out, but when it does come out, the world's going to be ready for it.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I love that. Thank you. And thank you guys so much for watching and listening. And if you found any value in this episode, make sure to like, subscribe, and also ring the notification. That way you're up to date when the next episode comes out. And stay tuned for the next one. Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye.